Hello, welcome to Pardon My Vlog for 28th of August. Another fine week for us all. As you can see behind me, I bought some new books. The Catherine Briggs Folk Tales of Britain collection from the Folio Society. Some lovely stuff, so that'll be appearing on What the Folk soon enough. Bought those in Hay-on-Wye, lovely town there. For those of you who don't know, Hay-on-Wye is the bookshop capital of England, or I suppose of Britain, more properly. It's in Wales, technically. There's something like 20 bookshops there. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And I was able to get those books that I've been wanting for many years now, since they were first released by the Folio Society in 2011, I think. I was able to get those relatively cheaply, about half price each, and really quite glad I got those. So I thought I'd just talk to you about some stories. There's some news stories I've come across this week, all on the theme of archaeology. I've long thought about creating an archaeology aggregation website because it's very difficult to put together decent archaeology news. I find, at least. I find my Google news feeds fail me quite often, despite having all the correct searches and everything. And if anyone can suggest any good archaeology websites and the like, I'd greatly appreciate that. Preferably ones where you don't have to subscribe, because that seems to be the majority of them. And I, on principle, will not subscribe to a website. I have not done that for many years. It's just wrong. Wrong. Data must be free. So the first story is really sort of the winding up of an excavation that started in 2009 in Greece. A palace was discovered outside Sparta, dating from the 17th century BC. So this puts it firmly in the Mycenaean age, which is really nice, and it's a very well preserved site. Now, this site has also been quite notable for the number of texts it's produced, all of which have been in the Linear B, the Mycenaean script, which is the earliest form of Greek, which we always want to see more of. You know, texts are always the most important find you can have. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the Mycenaean period in Greece is kind of considered the heroic age, if you will. It's the end of Bronze Age Greece, but not the Greece we're familiar with. Basically, after the Mycenaean age, the Mycenaeans were the first sort of Greek civilization, sort of the first flowering of Greece, with its city-states and such, and its development of literature. Well, its development of writing. It didn't really have literature per se. That was developed from the Linear A script, which they got from the Minoans on the island of Crete, named after King Minos and his Minotaur, you may remember. They're the beginnings of Greek society and civilization. Then there's a collapse from a sea people. Now, there's multiple sea peoples made reference to across the Mediterranean. Sometimes they're thought to be the Phoenicians. There's sort of references to invasions from in Egypt, Israel, Palestine, etc., Anatolia, and Greece. Now, there's also a major invasion into the Greek territories at this point, and sort of think Anglo-Saxons into Britain in the 4th century AD. A sort of a changing of genetic stock somewhat, but still maintaining cultures. So then there's a dark age in Greek history for a while, and it's during this period that the Homeric tales are believed to be developed. All literacy is lost during this period and then doesn't come back for a number of centuries later. I think it's not till, I don't think it's till the 10th century BC that writing comes back. Could be wrong on that one though. That's just a vague memory. And then we get into the Greek. the Greeks that we know of, that we more readily think of, I should say. So this palace is very interesting, though of course it's being politicised due to the banking crisis in Greece and the debt problems and all that. I will say this, I read the story on The Guardian, not one comment that said this is Sparta. We all knew, I hope, that this is not Sparta. That made me happy, not seeing that. Okay. Next, I want to talk about the really collection of stories that have been going on for about a year. And this really depresses me. The actions of ISIS in the Middle East, with their destruction of archaeological sites in Iran, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Now, that's a very historically important area for the development of civilization. That's Mesopotamia. That's Persia. You know, that's the cradle of civilization. And these ancient cities that have been preserved for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years are being destroyed by these fuckheads. And yes, they're taking lives is terrible too. But, you know, they've destroyed Nimrod. They've sacked other cities. We're never getting those back. You know, Nimrod that has stood for 4,000 years is gone. And it's think of the weight of that much time destroyed because of a fanatic. Now, I'm not going to refer to any particular story about what ISIS has done. The Nimrod one particularly affected me. I've been studying, well, when it occurred, it was a couple of months ago. I was studying Mesopotamian history and the like at the time, and that really hit me. It's just, that's gone. I will never get to see that. No one will ever get to see that again, because some fuckhead with a bulldozer decided it didn't fit with his version of history. Now, some of you may ask why ISIS is doing this. Because they want to wipe out the pre-Islamic history of the Middle East. They've really taken against Zoroastrianism, which was the predominant religion of these areas. The Persian, there was older religions in the Babylonian and the Mesopotamian context, and religion, and even local gods that sort of stayed there in between. We tend to think of religions as very monolithic, but it's actually, there's sort of in previous times we like to think of, there was only Christianity in Europe before last week, basically. But there's always been small religious communities dotted around of all faiths. Well, not all faiths, but a lot of different faiths. Some have acclimatized and then eventually become others. But anyway, in the Middle Eastern context, for thousands of years, you had local gods who sometimes, actually, particularly during the early Mesopotamian era, would then sort of wax and wane in importance. The history of the Mesopotamian gods is very interesting. So you can actually watch gods rise and fall. Very interesting, yeah, especially as a fantasy writer, sort of watching the actual rising and falling of certain gods. So I'll finish off with one last story. This is a bit of speculation, really, but I think it's worth noting because it has some interesting implications. Now, high-resolution images of King Tutankhamun's tomb have been available for a while now. Very high-resolution stuff. And an American archaeologist has studied these. He's a professor at the College of Arizona, I believe. Well, I think Arizona College. I'm not sure. I haven't got the article in front of me. Has examined these images. I think it's also available on film as well. And believes he's noted a number of secret passages in that may lead to Queen Nefertiti's tomb. Because Queen Nefertiti being the wife of King Tutankhamun's father and potentially his sister, and maybe his mother. Unsure of that one. Because of the way Tutankhamun's tomb was constructed, it's believed it's just an add-on to a larger tomb, but we've never found the larger tomb. And it's being suggested that these potential doorways will lead to one of those tombs, and the likeliest candidate is Queen Nefertiti. So he's applying to the Department of Antiquities, I believe it's called, of the Egyptian government, to have this investigated. I'm not sure he's proposing. I think high resonance scanning or something, because that's obviously quite dangerous to do for such a structure. It'd be quite fascinating if you find a new tomb. There's two he's found. He believes one leads to another tomb and another is a storage room. So it might mean we find more artifacts. From what I remember correctly about Tutankhamun's tomb, there was very little in the way of texts. So it's thought they might be there. So that'd be excellent, because I think that period is relatively yes, because that's in the post-Arkan religion period. So seeing a revival religious texts, you'd expect to see those in a Tutankhamun's tomb. Though, from what I understand, he didn't do that much to revive it. It was more of the priesthood. But anyway, so that's very interesting stuff, and I look forward to reading more about that. But as I said, that's speculation, but I think learned speculation. It's always worth reporting. So I hope these stories interested you. I'll try and keep, if I see any more interesting news stories, I'll bring them up next time. Next time it's my time to vlog. So have a good night. Thank you.